Following Freedom by Laurie Darby and Dear Ma, Ethic by Jenie Gao use seemingly simple structures to explore complex ideas of grief, joy, strength, and healing. Let's look at how these two distinct books elevate the accordion and one-sheet book formats to create rich, multidimensional spaces of plants, land, and water. Laurie Darby is a printmaker, papermaker, and book artist based in Savannah, Georgia. Her work regularly incorporates nature as a metaphor for identity, memory, and belonging. Flowers in particular pay homage to the ecological connections of the African American family, spirituality, food, planting, and place. Across all of her works, she aims to connect the past with the present. Created at Women's Studio Workshop, Following Freedom collapses time between the Civil War tragedy at Ebenezer Creek in Georgia and Darby's life in the present day. The cover shows a historical map of the area. Immediately inside, Darby gives us a condensed history. Thousands of enslaved men, women, and children were following Union troops who were being chased by Confederate cavalry. At the creek, Union soldiers removed a temporary pontoon bridge before all of the enslaved people could cross, leading many of them to drown or be recaptured and forced back into enslavement. Transitioning with a psalm, Darby describes gratitude for her freedoms as she kayaks in these same waters, appreciating the wildlife and beauty of the plants and trees along the creek. Following Freedom opens into a double accordion by extending the introduction page toward the reader. This is one of many subtle actions and design decisions that brings the reader into the space of the book. The left side shows a panoramic relief print on handmade paper. Lily pads float in the background, and tendrils off the spider lily flowers rise, as if dancing toward the sky. These spider lilies are indigenous to the region and grow abundant in the land along the banks of Ebenezer Creek. Darby uses long, panoramic formats in many of her pieces. She said to me, "The panoramic feels as if it opens to infinity. I love that I am able to use the expansiveness of the image to invoke the larger story and then fold it into smaller vignettes." On the other side of the accordion, Darby created a watery night scene depicting blue indigo, a cash crop of the region that is deeply entwined with the history of slavery in the U.S. Cypress trees extend from the water as lily pads float abundant along the surface. This image is calming and beautiful, but I look at these waters and think about the enslaved people who didn't make it across the creek. I recall the psalm in Darby's introduction, which to me suggested being brought to a place of peace and rest. When I asked Darby about the psalm, she explained, "The underlying theme in all of my work is a return to Eden, looking to nature as a form for restoration. Water for me is of peace and has restorative powers, as the Bible verse references. The verse speaks of how my life would have been so drastically different had I lived 160 years ago." There's another side to this book, the interior between the two accordions. This space is lined with handmade paper that further connects us to place. While kayaking on Ebenezer Creek, Darby gathered plant matter directly from the water. She then made this paper with inclusions of the duckweed and other plants she collected. Letterpress printed on the two sides of the interior are the dates 1864, the year when the enslaved people were left behind by the Union Army, and 2024, the year Darby produced this book. Darby has skillfully used this double accordion structure. The two sides of the book share the same interior space, emphasizing the connections and continuity of time and place. Darby told me that it's important for her to locate herself in history because time is a continuum. She was raised in Pennsylvania, but as an adult she moved back to the region of Georgia where her mother's family had lived for 5 generations. I think of the people present in the layers of the title, Following Freedom. The enslaved Black Americans followed the Union Army in hopes of reaching freedom. Darby's mother's family moved north to escape poor treatment in Georgia. Darby returned to the South as an adult, now in an era where she is able to kayak on this creek without fear or need of refuge. In this book, she honors those who were never able to experience such freedoms. Following Freedom draws together water, land, and nature in an examination that layers and reflects on violent history, spiritual reclamation, and Black joy and leisure, all in relation to place. Based in Vancouver, Canada, Jenie Gao is an artist, entrepreneur, and creative director. Since 2014, they have run an anti-gentrification arts business, specializing in printmaking, public art, social practice, and community storytelling. Gao's multidisciplinary work draws from their experiences as a second-generation Taiwanese Chinese American and a descendant of working-class immigrants. Dear Ma Ethic is a poetic exploration of personal experience and how we arrive at our ethics. With text moving in different orientations and directions, I'm not sure how to start reading this intimate book. After turning it over and around a couple of times, I fall back on my Western reading habits and begin reading from left to right. The smaller text is a letter written to their mother. As Gao's text addresses where they came from and their father's death, the large upside-down words below indicate problems with the soil and water. Gao's letter carries grief, not just for their father, but for the land and everything held on it. While I sense that the upside-down words are forming a separate sentence, all of the large and small texts on each spread connect and relate to each other. As the pressure and difficulties on their mother and her land mount, Gao introduces irises and their healing actions on the land. Water floods, soil runs, but roots hold. When I reach the end of this side, I close the small book and turn it over. As I read this sentence unbroken, I am moved by how a plant I associate mostly with its beautiful flower is actually holding the land together and detoxifying the water. Unfolding the one-sheet booklet, I can see Gao's illustration of an iris in its entirety, with flower, roots, and land or water. I can also see how both texts circle around and across each other. When I flip the whole paper over, I see that just like the other side, Gao has interwoven an image with 2 typographically distinct but related texts. This time, I start by viewing the sheet unfolded, and the larger words catch my attention. This is the route of my migration, surrounded by bodies of water. I recognize the shape of the Great Lakes in white against the blue background. Gao said to me, "The imagery is based on a map of my migration, with water instead of land as the geographic anchor, a nod to the role of water in people's movements. The orientation of this map is also in defiance of the colonial cardinal directions." I explore the structure with my hands and manipulate the folds, so this side of the paper creates an accordion, and then a codex. When I picked up this book for the first time, the white side was facing out, and I didn't quite know how to enter into it. Now I see that it is without hierarchy. You can start reading from either side and move in any direction, even in multiple formats. It's not the starting point that's important. It's the interconnected relationships between the ideas, which is underscored by the way we almost tumble over and through the different texts as we read them. The poem describes water's power and vulnerability. Gao compares colonization to poison in the water and asks, is it possible to cleanse these currents? The poem returns to an examination of roots. It gets to the difficulty of being a root, how hard it is to keep holding, especially against stronger powers. Gao holds nothing back at the end. To be weaker than the dominant infrastructure and still hold on, to remove harm while providing nourishment. This is an ethic. Dear Ma ethic examines grief, healing, and holding against colonization, dominant cultures, and the economic powers that prioritize financial extraction over people and nature. As the unassuming yet complex structure changes form by expanding, collapsing, and inverting, we encounter unexpected and deeply interconnected ways to engage Gao's layered and beautiful poetry. Following Freedom and Dear Ma ethic examine water, migration, land, and roots, directly and as metaphors for healing and strength. Both books create space with nonlinear reading formats that bring us deep into the stories and beckon to be read again and again.